agree with me that we all share here the same frustration of having the question of Palestine item discussed every 3 months. We all wish that this item, the oldest and still ever present on the agenda of this august body since the creation of the United Nations, were taken out, had a just and durable settlement to the Middle East conflict been achieved and implemented based on the numerous resolutions adopted by this Council and in particular the Land for Peace principle. Unfortunately, it must be recognized that such a prospect keeps slipping away, and consequently the question of Palestine keeps rooting itself deep in the agenda of this august body. Indeed, Madam President, how can a just and durable solution be achieved, an independent, viable, and contiguous Palestinian state emerge when, one, the construction of 6,000 new Israeli units in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem has been approved by Israel since the beginning of the year. Two, a law retroactively legalizing settlements built on the occupied Palestinian territory was adopted last February. And three, when only a few weeks ago Israel approved the construction of a whole new settlement site. Madam President, last January, during a debate on preventive diplomacy, my delegation reminded this Council of Lebanon's initiative in 2016 to seek, based on the Charter of the United Nations and operative paragraph 10 of Security Council Resolution 1701, the good offices of the Secretary General in the delineation of the disputed maritime border and the exclusive economic zone between Lebanon and Israel, emphasizing that the non-resolution of this issue shall remain a source of conflict that threatens peace and security in our region. And while we were looking forward to receiving in this regard an update on the results of the efforts of the Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Israel, in an utter defiance to international law and in a clear attempt to undermine the Secretary General's good offices, threatened in a letter dated February 2 that it will, and I quote, not allow what it referred to as an unauthorized economic activities, including inter alia the granting of rights by another state to any third party, exploratory activities, drilling, or exploration of natural resources in maritime areas in which Israel asserts sovereignty rights and jurisdiction. End of quote. In a letter to the Secretary General, my government responded to these threats by reiterating Lebanon's long-standing commitment to international law and in particular to the provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea regarding the delimitation of maritime borders. However, these were not the only Israeli threats against my country, as only a few weeks later, Naftali Bennett, Israel's Minister of Education, threatened in an interview with Haaretz on March 3, 2017, to launch, and I'm going to quote, a massive attack on the civilian infrastructure, along with additional air and ground action, targeting, this is the quote from Haaretz, Madam President, the Lebanese institutions, its infrastructure, airport, power stations, traffic junctions along Lebanese army bases with the aim of, and I quote anew, returning Lebanon to Middle Ages. The least one could say, Madam President, is that these are despicable words. Nothing could be more barbaric than threatening civilians. As to the outrageous threat of returning Lebanon to the Middle Ages, it is only reminiscent of the darkness of the Middle Ages. It remains that these threats and continued Israeli violations of my country's sovereignty, having all been documented and recorded in numerous letters addressed by my mission to this august body, allow me now to ask, isn't it high time for this Council to condemn these actions as blatant and deliberate violations of the UN Charter, the basic rules and principles of international law and international humanitarian law, as well as relevant United Nations resolutions? Yet my government remains firmly committed to the implementation of Resolution 1701 in its entirety and calls upon you one more time to show leadership and compel Israel to abide by its clear obligations under said resolution. Madam President, finally, do I need to remind that Lebanon has been commended for fighting terrorism? And allow me now to thank your government, along many others represented on this council, for their much appreciated commitment to support my country and strengthen the capabilities of its army to help it address the multiple challenges it is now facing, from combating terrorism to maintaining stability and safeguarding Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Lebanon for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Jordan.